Welcome to the Sharp Way, a Juneteenth special. Yes, a special this Friday evening. I know usually I'm doing Sharp Way Stew and with cracking jokes, and there will be some funny stuff today because I know for many people, Juneteenth is a day where we are more somber, and there'll be some of that, but there's also some good news. I think that while people have been concerned heavily about the racism in our country, or worried about police brutality, or concerned about all these different issues, I want to bring up something that is kind of positive. And I'll tell you in a second. But first, I want you to like, comment, and share. Please do that because I'm going to say some cool things which will make some of you actually pretty happy. Some of you, maybe not so much, but I think some of you will enjoy it no matter what. I'll always try to be entertaining. So please like, comment, share, let people know that I'm out here doing this. It matters. It truly does. Please follow me on Sharpway Twitter. I know I bug you every time, but some of you aren't doing it. So please go to Twitter and follow me there. Please like me on Facebook, Sharpway Facebook. It's important you do that. And of course, subscribe to YouTube. Click on the bell for notifications. And as always, if you got some cash, you like what I'm giving, please patreon.com/Sharpway. That is critical that we keep this going. I appreciate everything that we have going on here. Yes, good evening, everybody. How are you guys? Very happy that you were all here. Thank you so much for showing up today. All right, what I want to bring up today, if I could, is there is a comment. There are two common sides to what's going on in America today. Side number one is that everybody's racist, everything is racist, everybody's racist. And side two is there's no racism. Both are wrong. Both of those are wrong. The reality of it is that this is the good news. We actually aren't that racist. Uh-oh, some people are upset. No, but this is a good thing. Hear me out here before you decide to destroy me with comments. Here's what I mean by that. Humans, just people, we aren't naturally racist. We are naturally tribal. That's true. Humans are absolutely tribal. We want to get in our own tribes, but our tribes aren't always about race. Race was being created heavily because of government policies, right? Individuals, if we just go around talking, we tend to integrate. We tend to not segregate ourselves. As we start chatting and talking, eventually some people go back and forth and mix and match. Happens all the time. And people know that. And the elites know that. So what does that mean? Well, they have to create rules and regulations to make sure we don't do that. Because then tribes might come up through social class or through religion or through where you live. And tribes will come up all over the place. And they happen to. And they'll cross race. They'll cross even ethnicity. It happens all the time. It takes individual humans to be tribal. But we can expand our tribes, and we do it often. It takes government to make us racist. Yes, I'm a libertarian, and you kind of knew I'd come up with that one. But you know it's true. And I'm not making this up. Look, when I was in the Marine Corps, and I would go overseas. Going overseas, I remember when I was in other countries, I didn't care where the guy or gal was from. I just cared they were an American or Marine. And all of a sudden, we were buddies. That was our tribe, right? That was our tribe. We're buddies now because you're an American. I'm an American. I don't care where you come from, color your skin. We're Americans. We're tribes, right? We do it constantly. Look at, if you ever watch any of these specials, and as Vice does many of them, often does specials on, some reporter going into a white nationalist or a hate group or something like that. And what happens often is, for example, there'll be a Muslim woman who will go into a hate group or something like that, right? And she'll be with them for several weeks or several months. And at the end, whatever guy or gal, she uses this with a guy, whatever guy she's with goes, well, you're not that bad. But I thought he hated Muslims. Well, you're not that bad. Well, he'll still hate Jews or black people. He'll still hate that, but he just won't hate the Muslim because why? He knows one. He's put her into the tribe. It crossed over. And people know that. People actually know that. That's where those phrases come. You're one of the good ones. I know it sounds so horrible, but that's the origin of that phrase. You're one of the people who I think I can put into our tribe. That's what we think. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to say. It isn't racism. It's tribalism. And we can get around it if government doesn't get in the way. And you might go, wait a minute, you tell me government gets in the way? Yes, absolutely gets in the way 100%. And let me show you some what you may enjoy. Some of you may know about this idea of a one-drop rule. Some of you may have heard this before. The one-drop rule is a very American thing. And the one drop rule means, how do you decide if someone is of mixed race, if they fall into the black category or the white category? How do you do that? Well, the American government said, well, one drop rule. If you're not white, you're black. That's how that works. And it categorized people that way. But why? Why would you do that? Why would that matter? Here's the reason why. In the early years of America, before we were even a country, in the 1600s, a lot of poor people came over, either indentured servants or enslaved. Some were white, many were black, but some were white too. They came over. And when they came over, they actually decided that they didn't like how they were being treated. So they thought, we're going to actually go out there and fight these elite people who are trying to control us. And they were mixed, white and black and everything else mixed together, and nobody seemed to care until the elite people said, oh, this is a problem. There's a problem. So we're going to have to make some differences here. So we're going to shift and say, see, if you're black, that's different. If you're white, that's different, to keep the people who are white, because the people who ran the country, or the colonies at the time, they were mostly white. So they decided that was the rule. And that's the one drop rule. And let me give you something real fast. Some of you know this already, but some of you don't. And it may be very interesting for you to see this real fast. I'll give you something that you may enjoy real fast.
Until very recently, any person with one drop of black blood was black.
That's how it was.
In America's beginning, there was race mixing.
Did you hear what he just said? In America's beginning, there was race mixing. Why? Because race wasn't really a thing. Back in those days, 1700s, in reality, what people, if they identified themselves by tribe, it was from what country they came from. They were a Spaniard, or they were French, or they were Germanic, or they were Prussian, or insert thing here. That's what they were. They didn't see themselves as that.
Especially among indentured servants and slaves.
Yep.
In 1676, during Bacon's Rebellion, these blacks and whites fought the white ruling class holding them in bondage and lost.
There we go. Now all of a sudden, the white ruling class goes, these mixing is not going to help us out. They decided to say, this isn't going to help us out. So we gotta change something. We gotta break these tribes up. Racism by state-sponsored racism is literally created to break up the tribes. It's divide and conquer, and it started in the 1600s.
To prevent future rebellions, the ruling class introduced one of the earliest variations of the one drop of black blood rule, transforming a class-based society into a race-based society.
The purpose of the rule was to make clear
to be forward. That was the first time in writing they actually said a white person was a white person. It was because of that. It was the elites trying to say, how do I break up the indentured servants and the slaves? How do I break everybody up so that I don't get myself caught in the gallows, right? How do I do that? That was the entire piece. And this is why government sponsors. Without government, we would still be mixing back and forth. The race wasn't an issue.
Distinctions between black people and white people. Well, I may not ever be on the bottom down there with you because I'll never be a black person, but I can certainly have some sort of prestige or social status psychologically for being white.
Yes.
Interracial unions were outlawed.
Again, why were interracial unions outlawed? Because we would have mixed naturally. If any of you live in the South or around the South now, right, where supposedly, it's absolutely not true, but the image is some people are all racist. They integrate in the South like there's no tomorrow. Of course they do. Absolutely. Up here in the North too. And they were racist in the North also, of course, because laws made them that. Absolutely. Laws made them act that way. I'm telling you that if you have a good environment, people naturally integrate. Then they know that. So what do? You create a bad environment. You create laws and violence to ensure people don't do this.
Those with a drop of black blood were pushed into the black.
They even had rules on what you were, right? Oh, you're a quarter black, you're called a quadroon. And you're an eighth black, you're called an octoroon. They had all these things, and the government set these up so that people had to sit in categories and decide whether they were worthy or not.
This one drop rule defined slavery and entrenched the laws of segregation.
I cannot express how important this is as it decided what slavery was. If you go prior to this, if you were a slave, you either agreed to be a slave literally by signing up and being some type of servant for a certain number of years, or your tribe did something wrong, or you lost a war or something like that. That's what happened, right? But once all of a sudden now we have this idea that you're a slave because of race, and that had never happened before. This was special in America. You were because of race. And who decided that? Was the individual American? No. Individual people don't think this way. We as humans aren't that racist. And I want to be clear, this is actually good news. We as people aren't that racist, which is why you have to have government come in and force us to be racist, because naturally we wouldn't be that racist. So we don't do it when government comes in. But when you do that, here's the bigger issue. Once you have laws that state black people are X, white people are Y, octagrunes are this, quadroons are that. Once you have that and you live in that environment, well, you're voting for people. These are people who are now, as we move through America, right? Not from the colonies, but move through America. We're keeping this culture because we've had it for so long. We have laws that match this culture because now the culture has changed. And to believe these things, well, now you have to validate your laws. You have to validate your culture. You have to validate all of this stuff. And so what do? You start agreeing with everything. And by default now, the black person, because they're black, not because they made a mistake or something, because of that, now you're a slave because you're black. So therefore, all of a sudden, now you have the worst part. Of all the horrible parts of slavery in America, here's the worst part. Now you have chattel slavery, which means that now the children of slaves are slaves by default. Now they're all slaves. If you're born of a slave, you are a slave. Oh my God, that was special. That was special. Now, all of a sudden, black people in America became animals. Not because the average human being would have thought that, because they clearly wouldn't have thought that. That's why you required the laws. The laws made them animals. Now, people looked at it and said, yeah, I guess they're animals then, because the laws say so, and we live in a lawful society, so of course that must be true. Let's now stop buying into this, and it began to change everything. That's the key. Government came in and made this happen because humans wouldn't have done this naturally.
Until the Civil Rights Movement destroyed those laws. But not the one-drop rule,
there we go,
which reinvented itself into the 5 primary race boxes used by identity politics in its quest for racial justice.
Government is still checking boxes. Still checking boxes. It won't stop. That's what it does. This is a government issue. You knew as libertarian I'd come up with this, and I'm telling you the truth, that's actually true. This is the biggest issue. It is state-sponsored. And this is what I mean by saying it is institutional, state-sponsored. But it isn't just America. This divide and conquer thing has been done before. And I'll give you another. This is a piece from the movie Hotel Rwanda, talking about the Hutu and the Tutsi. And it's the same. The Belgians played this same game when they came in to take over the area that's now Rwanda. When they took it over, they acted the same way, and they made different people by law. This is in Rwanda, in the movie Hotel Rwanda.
What is the actual difference between a Hutu and a Tutsi?
He says, tell me the difference between a Hutu and a Tutsi, right? These two different groups of people within Rwanda, all Africans.
According to the Belgian colonists, the Tutsis are taller, more elegant. It was the Belgians that created the division.
So the Belgians literally made this division up. This division didn't exist in the area that's now known as Rwanda. It didn't exist. It was just people who were doing their own thing. It didn't exist. The Belgians decided to make one group of people different, divide and conquer. And you treat one group of people better. In the case of America, you treat poor whites better than poor blacks. In the case of Rwanda, you treat Hutu and Tutsis different because reasons. And listen to the reasons they come up with.
They pick people. Those with thinner noses, lighter skin. They used to measure the width of people's noses.
They would measure the width of people's noses, pick people randomly, and call them the new cool people.
the Belgians used the Tutsis to run the country. Then
So the Tutsis were now the cool people because the Belgians who were running it with force, their government force, decided the Tutsis are better. Okay, so now they run
when
things.
they left the power to the Hutus. And of course, the Hutus took a revenge on the elite Tutsis for years of repression.
And now they start fighting
Am I
each
telling
other.
the truth?
This created a civil war. This is fabricated racism that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Belgian government. Wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Belgian government. Yes, humans are tribal, but we can expand our tribes. We do it all the time. We do it all the time. We can expand our tribes. But once government makes it race, it changes it.
Paul.
Yes, unfortunately. Please take this to the general.
Now watch this next piece.
Benedict is our finest journalist in Kigali, an expert on the subject.
So now this guy doesn't get it.
I am Hutu. Gentlemen.
And he asked two women, what are they? Trying to figure out, okay, can I tell a difference?
Excuse me, honey. Can I ask you a personal question? Are you a Hutu or a Tutsi?
I am Tutsi.
He's Tutsi.
And your friend, Tutsi?
No, I'm Hutu.
He can't tell a difference. He doesn't know. Most of them don't know. It's a cultural issue that government has created, and that's my entire point. Human beings aren't that racist. We are tribal, but we aren't that racist. And if government leaves us alone, we tend to integrate on our own. We tend to expand our tribes on our own. We tend to join with people who are like us in our thought process, not the color of our skin or how wide our noses are or how dark or how light we are. Absolutely. It's a different issue. It is a government-sponsored issue. And when you hear me say things like government-sponsored violence, this is the kind of stuff that I mean. But again, it's not even here. Hold on. This is something from South Africa. In South Africa, they actually divvy people up, and they use the word colored. Colored means you are of mixed descent, right? White and black. So in South Africa, they divvy it up even more. Why? Because they want to treat people differently, so everyone wouldn't kill the elites, who in this case were Germans, Dutch, British, right? People who are from Europe, all of those people. So that was the reason why they did that. So let me grab this one. You'll see what I mean by this. This is a young lady who starts talking about these are things that people say about her group, which are colored.
Well, with you, but in South Africa, it's not just plain white and black. Black is broken up into so many pieces.
Black is broken up into different pieces. Who do you think breaks the people up? Huh?
It's not something that I created. I found it like that, and unfortunately, I am categorized as colored.
She is categorized as colored. This girl who doesn't care about race, who just wants to be whoever she is, she gets categorized as colored. By whom?
If you look on my ID, that's my identification documentation, it says that I'm colored.
So her ID given by government on it says colored. This is South Africa. This isn't America. This is what I'm talking about. This is what governments do. Do you think the average person who would either like this girl or not like this girl or work with this girl or not work with this girl is going to, well, it's because she colored? Of course not. They would decide if they want to work or be around this girl or not, based upon whether they matched or whatever the case may be. But no. But now there's also things now. There's stereotypes. Again, South Africa that people talk about.
So this term is used in America. It is used in America, but you guys don't like it.
We don't like that.
And the term is used in South Africa as well. It's something we have to live with. And
it's something we have to live with. It was just there. She doesn't like this. And she's stuck with this, just like we are. If we lessen the power of government, all these labels begin to go away. And young ladies like her can just live her life without being titled. And Americans can start to live our lives without this issue also.
Something that I'm proud of being. So let me get into these responses. Someone said, okay, this is actually a response from a colored girl herself.
Someone says this.
People think we're all aggressive.
People think we're all aggressive. How, if you're not South African, how would you know? Oh, colored girls, they're so aggressive. It doesn't matter. The point is now, because they've created colored, which again is created by the government, now we have to somehow categorize them and decide that colored girls are now aggressive. And that happens again and again. So this isn't just the idea of divide and conquer by government is not an American idea. That is a common idea. However, the idea of slavery by race to create chattel, that is American. That part is actually American. But I'm going to give you something that may be a little bit fun. I hope you'll at least enjoy a little bit of it, right? Because there is one thing I want to bring up, and this is how we can actually be tribes. And this is a recent, I don't know it's recent, but about 4 years ago, Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live, they have a thing called Black Jeopardy. You may enjoy Black Jeopardy. I don't know if you have or not, but I think it's very funny. And this is one that I think you may enjoy. And it shows how we can absolutely, as a joke, obviously, but it shows how we can become tribes.
I'm your host, Darnell Hayes. Our contestants are Keely,
Hey.
Shanice,
Okay, now.
and Doug.
How are you doing, sir?
See this?
Oh, damn. Doug, you sure you ready to play Black Jeopardy?
See how this is a good little episode here because it does actually show a transition. It begins how most people think. Oh, black and white are the tribes that they've assigned to us. So therefore, you can't be in Black Jeopardy because you're not part of the black tribe. So now all of a sudden our tribe is based upon race, color of skin. But watch as it keeps going.
They told me a fella can win some money, so let's win me some money. Get her done.
There we go. Now, as you move along, he actually answers the question. Again, this is a joke, but I think it really is good to see how he answers the question.
The board is yours, Shanice.
Let's go with they're out there saying for 200.
Okay, the answer, they out here saying the new iPhone wants your thumbprint for your protection. Oh, okay then, Doug.
What is? I don't think so. That's how they get you.
Yes!
Look how happy he is.
Yes!
The audience, this is a live audience. They're getting it. They're going, oh my God, this guy connects to us. We thought that he couldn't because his skin color was different, but there are things that we agree with. We can bring him into our tribe. This is a joke. I get it. But this is how reality actually works. If you don't force people, if you don't categorize them, if you get the big brother out and let people interact on their own, this begins to happen all the time. Saturday Night Live is right.
I don't trust that.
Me either.
No, I read that go straight to the government.
Well, that is not bad, Doug.
See, everyone's happy with Doug. He's libertarian. See that?
The board is yours.
There we go. So I think that I like that part because it shows how anyone can become a part of the tribe.
Let's go to they out here saying for 8.
Okay, the answer there. They out here saying that every vote counts. Oh, Doug again.
What is? Come on, they already decided who wins even before it happens.
Yes! Yes!
Look at Doug join the tribe.
Yes! Man, the Illuminati figured that out months ago. That's another one for Doug.
Okay, we're doing it. Let's try.
See, this is the part that I love. It's a joke, obviously, but you get what I'm saying. This is the way that we begin to join each other's tribes, right? We share a lot in common being Americans. This is why I talk about this idea of Juneteenth. While very important, absolutely, I don't want us to focus on the idea that this is a bad time for us. I know right now it feels bad, but in reality, we are actually closer than we've been in a while. I really mean that, right? We actually are. The average human being is nowhere near that racist. It just isn't. It takes government to make it that bad, right? I'm going to grab a couple of these things that actually come up if I could real fast. Biden says if you don't support him, then you ain't black. Shelley, that's exactly right. And that's what governments do. Governments decide to jump on board and jump on the race card all the time. It's what they do. It isn't just Biden. It's Trump too. It's the left-right paradigm has decided that they own racism in either way. They decided that already. And sadly, we fall into that. It's simply not accurate. It just isn't. You can be black and vote for anybody you want. And it doesn't matter. But sadly, our environment is creating this. And I want it to stop. It is just so hard when government is involved. All right. The next issue I want to bring up is, as we go through this, there's another piece you might have heard, and this is from Juneteenth, which is the idea of 40 acres and a mule. Again, this is the government making trying to make something work well, but then not working well. Some of you may know what 40 acres and a mule is. This was the idea that after the Civil War, there'd be some form of reparations. This concept was a great concept. The idea was, here are the white landowners, right? Not the poor whites, but the wealthy white landowners who were all using slave labor, to grow. Well, then this land would then be opened up, right? So that slaves can come back and get the land. They would get some type of land. So that was the goal behind this. Oops, hold on. Let me see if I can pop this up for you if I can real fast, and you'll see this. So pop this one and boom.
And the order basically said people can have family-sized plots, about 40 acres each, that they can settle on in a swath of land that stretched from the northern parts of South Carolina all the way down through Georgia. And
so the idea was, let's give these people some land and let them go do their own thing. And most Black people didn't want help from the government. They really didn't. They just wanted land that they believed they had been working on for many of them decades, that this is what they would get, and then they could just move on and start their life again. That was what most of the Black population, the free population, wanted.
Into a little bit of Florida and extending from the coast and the Sea Islands about 30 miles inland, and that those lands could
would be given back
independently by free
Makes
people.
sense, right?
And then later there was a separate order that said broken down Army mules could also be issued.
So now the Army had all these mules it was using to fight the Civil War. The concept thought, the idea thought, well, when the war's over, we don't need these mules. Let's give these mules too. We'll give the mules to the freed slaves. We don't need them anymore. The war's over. And take the land from the wealthy landowners. This is brilliant reparations. No one else pays. Only the wealthy landowners pay. The Army doesn't need the mules. Take it. What an amazingly awesome idea.
Freed people who were beginning to farm on this land. Most of the white landowners, the plantation owners, had fled that region.
They left that area, so they weren't even there anymore.
Earlier in the war, word spread about this policy, and so you saw.
So now all of a sudden, word spreads that now, if you're a former freed slave, you can get some land and get a mule. And of course, all the freed slaves are going to go there. Great, the government has said that we're going to get us some land and move forward. Life is good. Let's go do that. Yeah, that's not kind of how it works, though, because the sad part is after this,
the coast of South Carolina and into Georgia are really the only places.
Hold on.
Would be forthcoming.
The problem, of course, is
over the course of summer of 1865 and fall of 1865, Johnson,
of course, the Johnson, of course, for those you don't know, is the person who succeeded Lincoln after Lincoln was shot.
President began pardoning the former Confederates, the white landowners, and allowing them to come back to the land and reclaim it.
So he comes back. The white landowners come back to reclaim the land. The Black people were already on it. They were already restarting their lives. And what happens?
And so this was a huge disappointment to free people who had begun farming there. One of the results of that was some people ending up having to give up the tracts of land that they had begun.
They had to give up the tracts of land. I wonder how they had to give it up. Do you think those people just walked away? Or do you think the government came in and said, this is someone else's land, leave or we'll shoot you? This is state-sponsored violence again. The state-sponsored violence of slavery came right to this. Imagine what our country would be like if this actually worked. Take just in your mind 30 seconds, a minute to think. If the former free slaves had just gotten their own land and that was that, what would have happened? Just began to change everything, but that didn't happen. Instead, now they get removed.
And being kind of forced into signing labor contracts.
Oh, kind of forced. Yeah. Say what you mean.
Where they would now be working for.
They had two choices: become poor sharecroppers or get physically evicted from land and have no place to go. That's the reality. That is why reparations never happened in America, because of that right there. In every other situation where you see a minority being hurt or attacked or punished in some way, shape, or form, there was some form of reparations and sorry, and here's your money and go off and about your way. Not this case. This case, it was promised and then removed. It was promised and then forcefully removed and then reinforced by state-sponsored violence. You might say, well, Larry, that sounds terrible. It is. I would agree. It is terrible. But it gets even worse. Because when Black people actually did, without government assistance, again, without government assistance, no, in none of these cases, in the early years, is the Black population asking for handouts or asking for government help. They're not doing that at all. So let me keep going if I can. I'll give you one more, which I think you may enjoy. This now goes to something that's very topical, by the way, and that is Black Wall Street. In the case of Black Wall Street, the massacre happens, but the key part is why it happens, right? There was an affluent Black neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was not looking for handouts at all. That wasn't their goal. They were Black-owned businesses. They called it Black Wall Street, right? All that stuff. But here's the problem. One guy gets arrested because he stepped on a white woman's foot. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense, Larry. Of course it does. It makes sense because literally 200 years or 150 years earlier, America decided that Blacks were slaves because they were Black, which makes it chattel slavery, which turns Black people literally into animals. Not just animals, second-class citizens. And then second-class citizens and animals. So now it's, 150 years of this mentality. Remember, when the government creates the laws, culture begins to shift towards that, right? And then you have to validate this. We see this with war on drugs now, right? Somehow we've decided because of our culture that crack is evil, but cocaine's kind of okay because rich people do it. Why? Because we saw it. Our culture has changed. The laws are far worse for crack than cocaine. And our culture begins to change and agree with what is right. We begin to align right and wrong with legality. That is a common thing that humans do. And we did it here too. So this Black guy he's a second-class citizen. He's basically an animal. I know it's still several years after slavery, but it's a problem. But it's a second issue that people don't always talk about. I'll come up here now. You always find huge chunks of problems, race relationship problems, right after a war, right after the Civil War, right after World War I. This is right after World War I. Why? Because you have Black soldiers and veterans fighting in France and Belgium. They're fighting in France right now, fighting the Germans. And then remember, this is the old days. They don't have planes, just fly you right back, right? So, the war ends the end of 1918. You find the Black veterans coming back home around 1920 or so. Well, you come back from your war. You've been fighting the Germans. What do you expect if you're a Black soldier? You expect equal rights. You were fighting right next to the, to the right with the white units. I mean, they're segregated units still, of course. Another thing, the units were segregated. Not if you were Hispanic. You could be mixed with the white people if you were Hispanic. You only would have a separate unit if you were Black only. There wasn't a Spanish unit and an Asian unit. There were Asian units in World War II, but only Japanese, not Chinese, only Japanese. So only Black units separate, but you come back and you want your rights. Yeah, we're not going to accept that because our culture has told us that you are less than. Our laws have told us that we can't mix with you because you're different. You're not one of us. Law has told us you're not part of our tribe. Therefore, you are the other and we can punish you. And that's where this begins. But government gets worse here. She's arrested. So now tensions are rising because, well, wait a minute. The Black community is doing well. We can't have that. So white mob is given weapons from government officials. Of course, you hear me say all the time, state-sponsored violence. This is what I'm talking about. State-sponsored violence. So they go outside a courthouse. Now, of course, these veterans, the Black veterans, they have guns too. So they show up. I wonder where gun laws come from. Oh, could they be racist too? Yes. Here is the problem that America deals with and is dealing with now and has been dealing with. the racist policies, meaning government laws that were created to reinforce the difference between the races, which is a fabricated difference, to reinforce that. Now what winds up happening? Well, eventually those bad laws start affecting people who aren't black. Why? Because the laws and the separation was bogus in the first place. I say it again, I'll keep saying it. Humans aren't that racist. We're tribal. We're not racist. Not as a people, we're not. It takes law to change culture. So as we had these gun laws to stop the blacks from having guns, well, of course, it began to cross over to whites too. Now, white people are all pro-Second Amendment. We've got to change that. Now, the drug war was begun to stop black people, to get them. We're not expecting white people. We've got to change those laws now. Because the laws are never going to affect one group of people by race. Because race is a construct by government. That's my point. We're not that racist. We're really just tribal. So they come to protect them. Right? But the white men, some of the white men go, you can't have guns. This right here is, we got to stop the blacks from having guns. So a white guy tries to get the weapon away from the veteran. And what happens? He gets killed.
The first shot rings off, and it's a white casualty as he tried to disarm a black veteran. And then that's when the chaos broke out.
100%.
And so over time through the night, shooting and killing through the morning, where the governor declared martial law.
Of course, martial law. We got to stop this, of course.
And National Guard troops.
Government, National Guard comes in to destroy private property, businesses. National Guard comes in. Government-sponsored violence.
And in addition to local law enforcement, and began to take Black people out of their homes and round them up into internment camps.
Internment camps.
And that facilitated the destruction and burning of...
Because they can't defend their property. So the government takes them all, gets them out, so they can't defend their property, and the property gets burned.
Greenwood neighborhood.
This is, again, state-sponsored, government-sponsored. This is how do you expect people to think? And then what does now the press say? Well, the press says, well, 2 whites died in a race riot. Well, see? You uppity Negroes. What did you do killing white people? That's what everyone sees. That's what everybody sees. And if you're not there, you don't get it. This is state-sponsored. And that has always been my issue. We as human beings would not be this racist if government wouldn't put us into these boxes and actually make us act this way. That changes our culture. And then they sponsor it again and again and again. This is a huge problem, guys. This is what I've been talking about. But I'm not done. I'm not done. Now it's after World War II. Black people want to get theirs too. They fought in World War II. They come back. They want it. They want to get theirs, right? Of course they do. They want to have their shot yet again. They couldn't get the shot, the American dream, after the Civil War because the 40 acres and the mule taken away. They couldn't get their shot after World War I because that's when, literally, that's the 1920s when the Ku Klux Klan marches in D.C. So nope, the government is. That's when Woodrow Wilson resegregates everything. Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, resegregated the military. It was being desegregated. He was like, nope, resegregate. Absolutely, resegregate. So government, again, did the same thing, yet again, got in a way and made stuff separate. But now it's after World War II. Okay, so now we got a shot here, right? Now the black family is going to make it. Now we know it's going to be fine. Of course it will be. Yeah, no, not really. This is now Federal Housing Administration guidelines. National Housing Act.
The FHA underwriters warn that the presence of even 1 or 2 non-white families.
1 or 2 non-white families. This is the government trying to support veterans as they come back so they can buy houses, right? So we can start building out new housing, building out new equipment, building out new homes and families.
Could undermine real estate values in the new suburbs.
Yep.
These government guidelines were widely adopted by private industry.
100%. Government says this, and then we all go, okay, well, we vote for this government. We love our country, and if the government says so, it must be true. And boom, we jump into that. And this is the idea of redlining, where now Black families couldn't get loans to buy homes. Black families couldn't get mortgages and physically couldn't get into some neighborhoods. Literally couldn't get into some neighborhoods. So now there's new government housing and housing being built cheaply in suburbs. Black people can't get there. Physically are stopped by law. Again, law creates the line. Government creates the line, because if government didn't create the line, we would naturally begin to integrate. It's what we've been doing since the 1600s.
Race had long played a role in local real estate practices.
That's a problem.
Starting in the 1930s, government officials institutionalized the national appraisal system.
Starting in the 30s,
factor in
government
real estate
officials
assessment as the condition of the property.
Absolutely. Can't have the infiltration of Negroes. This is government, right? You can have 30% of these foreign-born Jews and Irish. You see that right there, right? So these Jews and Irishmen, we can get 30% of those. We're okay with that. That's still horribly racist, but still. But we'll let the Jews and the Irish get 30%. But blacks, no, we can't do that. Can't let them in.
Using this scheme, federal investigators evaluated 239 cities across the country for financial risk.
Now the government,
so that those communities
gave
that were
it
all
the
white,
ratings,
suburban and far away from minority areas. They received the highest rating, and that was the color green.
Green was the best, of course. This, by the way, if you look, is Manhattan.
All minority or in the process of changing, they got the lowest rating.
Yep. I want you to be clear on something. This map is New York. This isn't South Carolina or Georgia or, oh, the South is so racist. This is New York City. What you're looking at right now is a cross section. Upper left-hand side is Manhattan. Lower right-hand side is Brooklyn and Queens. This is Manhattan. And this is New York City.
And the color red. They were redlined.
Redlined. Hazardous. Why are they hazardous? Because black people are there. This is government sponsored. Do you really think that the average person in the South or the North or any place, if you want to sell your house and a black family wants to write you a check to sell your house, a lot of people would have said fine. And if the black family that moved in wasn't a bad family, most people would have been like, okay, fine, there's a black family next to me, whatever. Would have been. Except we had 300 years of government-sponsored racism, government-sponsored separation, government-sponsored segregation. That's what it was.
As a consequence, most of the mortgages went to suburbanizing America.
There we go.
And it suburbanized it racially.
Yep.
The racial logic adopts the principle that an integrated neighborhood is a bad risk.
There we go. And that's what we talk about. And this is what I mean. When people stand here and go, there's no such thing as institutionalized racism, I think I just spent the last 45 minutes or so explaining that that kind of is. There's absolutely some evidence of this to be true. Absolutely. And because we aren't that racist, that's the good news. I know I gave you a lot of bad news, but the good news is we, particularly as Americans, have you seen how much we integrate and how the youth does? The glory. There's so many bad things about George Floyd's death. There's one glorious thing about it. Look at the racial mix of the people who are protesting. That's amazing. It isn't just black people protesting. It's black people, Hispanic, Asian, white, everybody. Lots of people, men, women. They're out there. That's amazing. That's great. That I'm very happy about. At least that's true. But now I want to cover, that was redlining, right? So now we fought through this and we're like, okay, now we got it. No worries. Now it's the 60s. And you know what's happened in the 60s? Well, we've got the Civil Rights Movement. We've got the Civil Rights Act. Now I want you to be clear on this. I was born in New York City. my parents, I was born in 1968, 52. So I was born in 1968. In 1968, when I was born, my parents were of mix, white and black. My birth mom was white, and my birth father was black. I was put up for adoption. When I was put up for adoption, guess what New York City rules and regulations were? I couldn't be adopted by a white family. That was against New York state law. Not Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. No, New York State. We're supposed to be the most, oh my God, we're the greatest state and all that stuff. Yeah. Oh my God. New York State. Luckily, total luck, I happen to get a mixed couple to adopt me. Yes. Just look. What the hell were the odds of that in 1968? And this, by the way, was after MLK was killed. After he was killed, 3 years after the Civil Rights Act is enacted, and they still had that law in New York State. Yes. New York State still was going on. But of course, we have problems, right? And the problems, of course, are Nixon. Nixon now hates very much. He cannot stand black people. And he has to end it. And here's what he said when he started the war on drugs. The war on drugs, if every single time you see black people trying to get ahead, right? They get smashed by government. Guaranteed. So now the Civil Rights Act is put in place, which, by the way, that war on poverty was not helpful for us. I believe that was desperation. I believe the black population became far more socialist because when they were more libertarian, the government crushed them. If you look at what everybody was saying back then, in those days prior to the 1960s, most black families were all about black this, black ownership, black everything. They were all about that. Then they're like, we give up then. Fine. We'll be socialists. Fine. Just get us ahead. Martin Luther King Jr. said it. He said, the law can't stop someone from being racist, but he hopes he can stop you from killing him. That's how desperate we were in the 60s. So Nixon sees us and goes, oh my God, you guys are kind of winning. Yeah, we can't have that. So we got to stop that. And here's Nixon, President of the United States. Here's what he says.
Administration official has admitted that the war on drugs is all about throwing black people in jail.
Quote,
the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people.
Two enemies, the anti-war left and black people.
You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black.
Couldn't make it illegal anymore because the Civil Rights Act stopped it. So you couldn't be illegal against black people anymore, right? Legally, you couldn't, right? You could because of the Civil Rights Act. You had done it before for the past 300 years, but now you couldn't. So you couldn't do that. So what do?
But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. If we made this war on drugs, again, this is at the top of America. Just 50 years ago, not even, less than 50 years ago. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes. Break up their meetings and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. This, again, President of the United States. And people will still tell me, Larry, there's no such thing as systematic or systematic racism. There's no such thing. President of the United States literally says we have to systematically destroy their families, vilify them on TV, break up their meetings, and destroy their communities. Well, Nixon, well done. Well done. Which is why you hear me get so upset when every pundit goes on TV and talks trash about the black community and doesn't bring up the war on drugs. The war on drugs is the worst thing to hit the black community in 50 years. It's the worst thing. We were actually about to begin turning it around. How do I know that? Because if you look what was happening on TV at this time, TV, Good Times, The Jeffersons, all of a sudden, non-black America was looking at black families. That, you may laugh at that, but boy, that was important. Colin Powell wrote a book years ago called My American Journey. And he talked about the idea of Amos and Andy
versus the TV show Cops. And he was like, I'd rather watch racist Amos and Andy because at least it was a black family. He'd take it. I'm with you, Colin Powell. I'd rather watch Good Times and the Jeffersons. At least it's a black family. And what else came out was The Cosby Show. I know Cosby's bad, but The Cosby Show came out. Family Matters was coming out. There were black families on TV. If it wasn't for the war on drugs, imagine how America would be looking at black families now. If it wasn't for the war on drugs, if it wasn't for that, the war on drugs created gangster rap. If you look at rap prior to gangster rap, it was dance music. It was dance music. Disco was dance music. It created everything about the drug and war on drug culture. The war on drugs, again, affected culture. Law affected culture. Government sponsored violence. A government that changed the culture to make it nasty and horrible and punish people. Now, how do I know? Well, is that true what Nixon said? Well, listen to Nixon's own what Nixon said in his own phone call. You can say, tell me I'm wrong, but his own phone call.
Even though he believed abortion encouraged permissiveness, it shouldn't always be out of the question.
He was anti-abortion. Unless you were a black and a white, then you can kill the kid. Then no worries. So anti-abortion, unless you're a mixed breed, then you're a terrible person. Then it's okay. No worries. This is his words. Top of our country. His words. And this is just 40 years ago or so. That's all it is. I just want to make sure you saw that so that you understood where my head was when I talk about this. Now, there is good news again. Even with all of this that's happening, there's still a very bright light at the end of the tunnel. And that bright light is less and less people are totally accepting the idea that race is the reason to hate people. Less and less are. Some still are, but less and less are. They're finding other reasons to hate people, which is fine. You can hate people, but should it really be the color of your skin? Of course not. Right? And you see also something else. We are mixing like there's no tomorrow, mixing like there's no tomorrow. And that's what we're integrating. Naturally, we are. And I'm going to give you, this is a very odd one, but it's a, hold on. This one is a young lady who is 1/4 black. And she's talking about how she sees herself and how people see her.
People will be like, they just look black. And it's like tricky because I'm not gonna lie, when I first ever got that comment, I was like, dang, good point, like touche. I'm the reverse, guys. That's the part that only I think mixed people understand, or people that have similar upbringings to me, is that I'm really familiar with that quarter. Like that's the part of me I know. That other big majority, which I know, like you looking at the skin tone and you're like, I don't know, girl, like where's the mixedness? And a lot of you are also not, so that's cool too. The reason I do identify as mixed, and I know like a lot of people will say, you're only a quarter, so like whatever. But for one, I'm never going to just.
This is now, you may not know what she's saying. I don't either. I guess I'm too old. She's a youngster. I don't know what she's saying, but I get the concept. What she's saying is, I'm mixed and so what? And my skin color and so what? She's saying so what? And she is very common in our youth. She's that mindset, that concept is very common in our youth. Now, you may not like how she's talking or whatever, I don't know, but it's still good. The idea that our youth is thinking, whatever, I don't care. I don't care if you're half black or half white or part Asian or part whatever. You're just mixed and we're all mixed. It's fine. That's the part that I like of what she's saying. That I think is a very warm and fuzzy thing that we can all feel better about. We can feel better about this, right? Because it isn't as bad as we might think. There absolutely is. The idea of the one drop rule is kind of going away, which I'm happy about. The idea of us accepting racist ideas because the rules and regulations that were set up to keep black people down are now affecting white people. And I hate that you're being affected by people. I really do.
So let's stop it and let's no one be affected. How about that? Let's just stop it so no one's affected. Why don't we just end the war on drugs, end the war on poverty, and then no one's affected? Absolutely. No one is. If you look at what I'm talking about and the other peoples who've come to America, Jews, Irish, Italians, Germans, who all came to America, all of them, every one of them had their own trials and tribulations they had to get over. Every one of them had to fight to move ahead. All of them did, regardless of what group they were. The only difference between all those other groups and Black Americans is hundreds of years of state-sponsored violence. Hundreds of years of state-sponsored violence. Now, all of those groups did have their own form of state-sponsored violence. Not hundreds of years, but they all did. The Japanese had their time in prison camps. Jews had, of course, European Jews were literally systematically murdered. Absolutely horrible. And at the end of every one of those terrible things that happened, the government that was responsible said, I'm sorry, that was wrong. Here is something. Not Black Americans. Nothing. No, I'm sorry. In fact, we doubled down. No reparations. In fact, we took more. And we burned what you did build. And we fought hard. And when you went through the law, and when you used the law for your side, because you hadn't been using the law for your side for literally hundreds of years. Finally, in the 60s, you surrender and go, fine, we'll use the law. You've been using the law against us. We'll use it. We'll get Civil Rights Act passed. We'll use the law because there's nothing else. If we don't do that, you just destroy us. So we'll use the law now too. So now we use the law and you go, we'll war on drugs. We'll now double down with the law. So now we use the law again against you. Consistently. That didn't exist for the rest. It just didn't. And that is what makes things different. That is what makes things different. I'm not asking any of you to all of a sudden go Juneteenth and the world's ending. No, I'm asking you to realize something. The odd thing about Juneteenth is that slaves were already freed before Juneteenth. They were already freed prior to. But there wasn't the rush to tell all the people in the South. So Juneteenth is June 19th when at the end in Texas, when they were actually told openly, okay, you're not slaves anymore. June 19th, 1865 is Juneteenth. You're not slaves anymore. And then the rest of the punishment began. And there weren't reparations. And there wasn't any of those things. So I want to say, guys, I hope that was good. I didn't take that many comments. I'm going to come through and grab a couple comments now if I could. I will grab some of them. So if I can. Let's see. They were outlawed when the government could no longer dictate whom. I must have missed that one. I apologize here. There's so many different ones here. Yes, Loving versus Virginia. There was a movie about that. Absolutely. 100% there was a movie about that. They try to keep white and Black people from marrying. Absolutely. 100%. I do want to thank you so much, Timothy. Larry now in the Libertarian Tribe. Yes, 100%. Look, I want to ask you this question. Do you think that Trump or Biden are going to try to increase their tribe? They're not. Trump's got his tribe. Biden's got his tribe. And they just want their tribe to show up in November more than the other tribe so they can win the election. That's all they care about. They're not trying to expand their tribe. We are. We want everyone to care about how they want to move forward in their own way. We want everyone to find happiness the way they want to find happiness. This is what the Black community was doing for 100 years after slavery. And then he finds that we can't, so let's just use the law instead. And then the law still got used against them. But now is our chance, guys. Now is our chance. We can end the war on poverty, end the war on drugs, so that no one suffers. Black people won't suffer either, and now neither will white people. How about no one suffers? I like that idea. Remember something, and I got to keep saying this. We aren't that racist. We really aren't as people. We are tribal, absolutely. But it takes government to make us racist. It takes that. Without that, we don't do it. We will naturally integrate. We will naturally desegregate. It's what we do. It's what we do naturally if you don't get government in the way. It's just how it works, 100%. So let me grab a couple of these here. Let's see here. We need to wipe the slate clean. I like that idea. Absolutely. Yes, it was Sherman's field order. Absolutely it was. 100%. Someone brought this up on my Facebook feed. I like that idea. Yes. Let's see here. Women were oppressed too. Absolutely. Women too. 100%. Absolutely. Women will also. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Gun control only increased the oppression of Black Americans. 100%. Yes. Gun control is by default racist and now is affecting white people, which I'm sorry, white people, but I'm glad because now maybe you'll stop it. So while I don't want you to be affected by it, I'm hoping now we can stop it because this shouldn't exist. So that's the only advantage that I can take it, that now all of a sudden things are changing. But I do want to bring up this here. Next time one of my Democrat friends tells me the Libertarian Party is alt-right and racist, I'm going to show him this video. Thank you, Brittany. Please do that. Absolutely. So, yeah. I've been consumed with the thought of why humanity is so obsessed with boxes, or at least Americans. I guess I can't comment with past my own reality. Yes, remember, government is very good at checking boxes, what it does, right? And we tend to want to be in tribes. And, we will naturally be in tribes, what we do. But tribes don't have to be based upon race, number one. And number two, tribes, even when you create them, can be expanded, right? If you don't give them some arbitrary limitation, like race, but not just that. All tribes don't have to fight. Tribes can trade and integrate and mix and go back and forth. Of course they can. And they often do. Think about our pop culture. In pop culture, very often, the guy or the gal is half this and half that, and that's why they're the leader and they run the thing. And it's very popular in our pop culture. Because we like the idea of mixing tribes and getting a little bit of this tribe and another tribe. It is human. We like it. It's in a lot of our pop culture. Someone's a half a vampire or whatever the cool thing of the day is, right? They're half this and half that. It's very common. We like that idea. So yes. All right. Larry, I have to ask, do you actually like law enforcement or not? I don't know what kind of question that is. Why would I not like law enforcement? Does that have to do with this? I don't know. I guess I don't know. My father was in law enforcement. Why would I not like law enforcement? Just because I'm talking about how bad government has been doesn't mean I have anything against cops. I don't. Of course not. My father was in law enforcement. I know many cops. Why would I think that? Of course not. Do I want them enforcing bad laws? No. So let's change the system. That's exactly my point. I just said, now keep saying, as humans, we aren't that racist. We are tribal. It takes law to make us be racist. That's what it does. Absolutely. Yes, there is a big mix of people. I love that. Yes. Yep. You lost many law enforcement officers who supported and still did until your post the last few weeks. I'm not sure what that means, Mike. I've never been anti-law enforcement. I've always been anti-system, and I still am anti-system. That hasn't changed. For those people who worship the system, I guess we have a problem, Mike. That's an issue. But I've never been anti-law enforcement, but I've always been anti-system, and I'm still anti-system. I think the system is broken, and it has to be fixed. I don't think that the average cop in any way, shape, or form is a bad guy. I don't believe that at all. They're just humans. Cops are people trying to do the job to the best of their ability. I see no difference. What I'm saying is, if you've got a crappy system, it encourages the bad cops to be even worse, and encourages good cops to be apathetic, and apathetic cops to turn a blind eye or even help the bad cops. I don't want that environment. I want an environment. I've discussed what the plan was, how you get the plan, right? Using what I talked about, the FAQS, facts plan, and also the quick plan. Those two plans changes the environment. I don't believe cops are racist. I think cops have a racist system, which I just discussed for the past hour. So yeah, I think the system's bad, but definitely I've never been anti-cop. Yeah. He's always supported cops and corrections. Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely true. So if cops want to vote Republican in New York State, you're throwing your vote away. If cops want to vote Democrat in New York State, you're throwing your vote away. When I ran for governor, I was the only candidate who talked about actually giving the corrections officers an actual contract. They hadn't had in almost 3 years. I was the only one talking about that. And taking out the punishment clause, which is what Cuomo wanted. The Democrat wanted to punish them. And if you're a corrections, you know that's true. I was the one saying, no, I don't want to make that happen. Yes. Yeah, exactly. My black family, generations of hardworking military serving men who wanted nothing from white people, but from to stay out of their way. and everything they got to fight against racism. I agree. Yes. I think most people thought that. Entrepreneurism has been the way that most people who are in any way disenfranchised, most new people coming to America, new groups, when Italians came, Jews came, Irish came, most of them got out through entrepreneurship. And Black people tried it also. They were the only ones who were smashed. So a little bit different in that regard. Yes. All right. Yeah, I loved Sanford and Son too. I loved him. Yes. Thomas, I'm full of crap. I'm sorry. I don't know why you would think that, Thomas. I don't know what I showed you that was full of crap. I don't know. Yes. I love the Jeffersons and Good Times. Yes. So good cops who support them and other bad guys. I don't know what that means, Mike. I'm not sure where you're going with that one. Family Matters was great. Absolutely. Fresh Prince. Imagine if we didn't have a war on drugs, but we had the Fresh Prince, Jeffersons, Good Times, Sanford and Son. That was happening, right? We were showing America that Black people were like anybody else, right? We were doing that. We were absolutely doing that. And then boom, it blew it up, right? So Cosby Show was the first time my dad's family felt like there was a program that represented them accurately. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Let's see here. Yes, rap used to be called The Rhymes. You remember, Shelly. I do also. Yes, I do also. $19 for the Sharpway for June. Thank you. Yes, whatever you can give, please head over to patreon.com/Sharpway. Give what you can give. Please do that. If you like what I'm doing, absolutely go ahead. Family Matters and Fresh Prince, absolutely. These are great things. 100%. Yes, our youth is far less racist, and that's why I'm so happy. They really are absolutely less racist. They don't like people for other reasons, and that's fine. So we can draw them to our movement. We don't have to push them into Democrats or push them into Republicans. We can draw them into our movement. Here's the reality. A lot of the youth is left. By Bernie losing, a lot of them are disenfranchised. We can bring them to us. I don't want them to go further left. Instead, bring them to us and show them that we have answers without having to pass new laws. How about we end a lot of those laws? How about we give people some more freedom? How about we do that instead? Let's do that instead and bring them to us that way. And what if Trump wins? If Trump wins, they're going to be just going crazy. Well, instead of going further left, which is what they will do if we don't do anything, let's bring them to us. We can bring them to our movement. It is possible if we just talk about this. Absolutely. So I like that. Does biracial mean you have mixed of two races? People are now calling it mixed. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but I've heard people saying that, calling it mixed. I'm not sure. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. Yes. So police protect and serve the state platform in the ruling class. You're just tax-paying peasants. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but sadly, it has been true. That absolutely has been true. Yes. And I do want more freedom. Yes. I don't know if we can rewind this. We have listened to this. Thank you so much. Yes, you don't have to rewind it, but again, it can go well. I want to bring up the last piece that people ask about often. And it's the idea of how do we move past? How do we deal with an idea of reparations? And I hear that a lot of people ask, well, what do you think about reparations? What do you think about reparations? How to do reparations? There are a lot of problems. Some of you have asked about this, so I'm happy to go through this. If you already heard it, I get it. I won't bore you too much. But the idea of reparations, this is a hard one. And it's hard because the people who were directly affected are long dead. That's a problem, right? When reparations were given to the Japanese internment camp survivors, they literally were there. You could easily say, here's a check. It was you who was affected. There we go. Reparations to the Jewish survivors of the Holocaust. Here's the money. Take it. It's good. It's you. And actually, the German government is still paying money to Jewish survivors now. And I get it. It's easy. And not just that, it's easy to punish the people who were there. I mean, it makes sense. You were physically there. So, yeah, I get it. You were one of the people who was there. Very easy to try to punish that person. It makes sense in that case. But now we're talking literally, hundreds of years ago. No, 150 years ago, right? Almost 150 years ago. People who aren't even there. People who weren't there. People had nothing to do with this. It's really hard. So how do you do that and deal with that issue? Well, some people say, well, you know what? Give them a check. Write them a check for X $1,000 if you're a descendant of slaves, right? I'm actually against that. And you might say, Larry, what do you mean? How else can we fund reparations? Whatever. I'm against it for several reasons. The first reason why I'm against it is The lottery. Yes, the lottery. When people win the lottery, over 50% of them are worse off 5 years later. About a third go bankrupt. Literally go bankrupt. So the lottery, a big chunk of money for the average American, is terrible for them. Why would I want to crush the black population and destroy them that way? That'd be a terrible idea. So I'm not about that at all. I'm not about big chunks of money. I'm also not about a constant flow of money coming in, because then that becomes, oh, now I'm getting my check constantly. What will happen? People will come and take that check. How do I know that? You watch that. You see payday loans. You see on TV, do you have a settlement? We'll give you cash now. It's your money. And everyone trying to get that money so they can just grab it and become a lottery and then lose all their money. That I don't want that. It will hurt them. Plus, you all of a sudden write a big check to a bunch of people. The rest of the country's mad. What about me? What about me? What about me? Bad, bad, bad. Not the right answer. What I want is to go back to the way the black population was looking to be made whole after the Civil War. What did the black population want? The black population wanted property. They wanted to be able to keep property in their family. They wanted to be able to do that. That's what I actually want. I actually don't want that. And I want to encourage integration without forcing it. So how can I encourage integration without forcing it? No force. How can I give people the opportunity to change their mindset into a ownership mindset? How do I do that? I'll tell you how I do that. I first off come up with a timeline. Time matters, right? Generally speaking, a generation is somewhere between 20 and 25 years. For the sake of argument, we'll say 23. I don't mind what the year is. Say 23. So you either go 1 or 2 generations, depending upon how this is set up. For the sake of argument, you go 2 generations, 46 years. So for 46 years, the black population is descendants of slaves are going to have some benefit to move forward and gain and keep property and have an ownership mentality. That's the goal, to change the culture to where it is ownership and wealth, not just money, because that's what was lost. Their labor was lost for literally 200 years, gone, given to someone else, and they never were able to retain their property and give it down. Great. First rule, anytime if you were a descendant of slaves, that you transfer wealth in any way, shape, or form to your family member, no tax. No tax. Zero tax. If you transfer wealth, no penalties, no tax. If you ever transfer any wealth from you to a family member, you get to transfer wealth now. Number one, that's the first piece. But there's 3 more pieces of this. This now goes to both property and businesses. In each case, if a property is owned 51% by a descendant of slaves, zero property tax if they own it. If it's personal property, zero property tax. Zero if they own it for they live in it, and it is 51% owned by someone who is a descendant of slaves. Now, what if it's investment property or commercial? Half of whatever the tax rate is, they pay half property tax on that. If it is 51% or more owned, why do I push that piece? Because it's 51% more or more owned by someone who's a descendant of slaves, you can still integrate. It encourages people to do so, particularly if it's investment property. Imagine if you want to build a huge building in New York City that costs $1 billion or whatever it costs, right? You want to build a building. Well, you get half property tax. What's the first thing you start thinking? Where the hell are my black friends? Where are my black friends? I need them on this. I need them to invest. I need them to be part of this. I'm paying half property tax. Where are my black friends? I don't have to force that. That will happen naturally. And that's what I want. And that's what I want. Not just that, any business tax. Half. 51% owned by someone who was a descendant of slaves. Half. Now, here's what's going to wind up happening. First off, it's going to encourage people to take advantage of this, particularly bigger deals. You're going to start bringing the black population into these bigger deals, integrating naturally as I want them to, learning and seeing and creating that and making the tribe bigger. But then more becomes to happen. Because now what's going to wind up happening, this is my libertarian streak in me. I'm sorry, guys. It's my libertarian streak in me. Here's what's going to wind up happening. People are going to start saying, if they're paying half, why the hell am I not paying half? I should pay half too. What's going to wind up happening? You're going to start lowering your property taxes and lowering your business taxes to match that by default. That's going to start happening. Everyone is going to begin to start benefiting from this because everyone's going to, I don't want to do this because this guy's 51% ownership.
Note, what I don't do is I'm not having quotas on employees, which is what happens now. Affirmative action quotas, what winds up happening, look at the big law firms in New York City. There's 200 people working there. And they go, no, we have 10% black employees. You do, where are they? Mailroom. That happens all the time. So I'm not about black employees. I'm about black ownership. And if you transfer that wealth, there's no tax on it. So I can give it to my sister, my cousin, my daughter. I can give that to somebody else if they're descendant of slaves as I am. That's how you begin to change the entire culture. Naturally integrate. Now people are going to be asking, where are my black friends to invest? Where are they? How can I help? How can we get together? Everyone begins to benefit from it. And all taxation starts coming down over time. Maybe over that first 23 years, maybe it's all equal. And if it winds up equalizing itself out, life is good. I imagine how awesome that would be in 23 years if we lowered all taxes, we integrated, and we gave black people the opportunity to transfer wealth for free as they should have been doing many, many years ago. This is a smart, savvy idea for reparations that in the long run helps everybody, and in the short run gives an uptick to the black population to be more about ownership, transferring wealth, having ownership, property, land, investment property, businesses, all those things. We do that and we can take care of all of this. This is a good time for us. I know it seems bad, but it really isn't. It shows several things. We aren't really that racist. We're just tribal, right? We aren't really that racist. We're just tribal. The youth are showing us this. They absolutely are showing us this. It is happening. And now we can make some real changes. Make changes to understand there is a difference, and we can make things right and finally move forward. Really, this could happen. All right. Thank you, Larry, for having a conversation. Absolutely, Mike. 100%. Yep. My kids are 12.5% black. That's a great question. And I think you follow our tradition. Our tradition has been with Native Americans that if you're less than, I think it's 1/8, then you're not considered a Native American. I think that's how it works. I would just follow that rule, which would be 12.5%. So your kids would be descendant of slaves, assuming that the black that they come from is descendant of slaves. They didn't come from, say, Nigeria or something like that. There are many Nigerian immigrants who aren't descendants of slaves. So assuming that your kids were descendants of slaves, they would be okay with this, following that rule. Yes. There's a problem, though, Larry. What about elderly black people who aren't able to own property and do all things you suggest? My 86-year-old grandmother is going to be able to take advantage of that type of reparations. And through this, her generation deserves some. Everyone does, Jay. I'm with you, brother. I agree. So you know what that means? That means you and her family members take advantage of it and give her some. That's what it means. You give her some. Your community steps up and takes care of her. Why? Because you can transfer wealth for free. Transfer it easily. Boom. So then people who are older, who aren't going to jump back. You're right. Some people aren't going to jump back in. They're not going to stop buying stuff. They're not. Totally correct. They're not going to. But now it's time for the community to step up and help out. Right? And someone can help her out. And look, your 86-year-old grandma, if she's 51% owner of something, she doesn't have to run it. They do a tax break. You still get the same tax break if she's the owner. So you put your grandma's name on the deed and move on. She's still the owner. She still gets benefits. Here's what I know. There are holes in my plan. Don't get me wrong. There are holes. And you've probably found one right there. But we'll find ways around that. There's no doubt. This is a very good, as all my concepts and ideas are, this is a very good framework to move forward. Maybe there's some holes. We could fix them. Absolutely. Yes. Minority-owned REITs and development companies may even reinvest in hurting communities. What a great idea. Yes, Eric, you're totally right. Yes, they would. Right? Because they have huge benefits. Yes, you'd increase the black investment community. Yes, you'd create more black Wall Streets all over again. But the best part, it's 51%, which means I can bring other people in. It doesn't just have to be a black-owned business, right? It could be black-owned by two people. And well, what if some white guys taking advantage of black people? 51%. So that's taking advantage of it. Yes. So, how many people who come to the U.S. after slavery ends who were subject to racist policies? Yeah, this is a tough piece, John. I mean, this is a harder part, right? You came in and you got beat up. This is a harder part. I mean, maybe there's something to that. I'm not sure. But the issue here I want to worry about is people who are descendants of slaves. It's if you came here from someplace else, hopefully you were able to at least move forward. I don't know. That may be a hole we have to fix also. But in any case, we want to try to make things better, right? I told my kids that the first one with a mother-in-law apartment wins me. There we go. See, I love that idea. So guys, I hope I was clear. I hope this was positive. I know there was some negative stuff in it, but I believe in the long run this is positive. If we look at what's happening in the long run, this is getting better. It's getting stronger. Juneteenth is a good day to talk about this stuff. I hope I answered some of your questions. I hope I showed you what I was talking about when it came to systematic. And understand the last thing, if I could just make sure this last piece lands. We aren't that racist. Humans just aren't. To be as racist as everyone says we have to be, it only takes government to do that. People just won't be that racist. We will be tribal, but not based upon something as silly as color of skin. That's not who we are as humans. That's not who we are at all. We can fix this. Let's pull government out. Let's add community in. Let's pull government out. Let's add commerce in. And let's get together to make this work. Thank you, guys. Have a great night. Have a wonderful weekend. And hope I'll see you guys on Monday. Happy Father's Day.